Hi-oh, it's me, Haroldson Ford, back at it again with a Boy Time Presents on Blade Runner 2049. And as always, I'm joined by Bevy. I don't know if I usually do the intro for these. Do I usually do it like that?
Probably not.
I just realized that I probably don't do that.
That's okay.
It's fine. Well, like I said, we're talking about Blade Runner 2049, a follow-up to our presents that we did a little over a month ago on the original Blade Runner. If you have not listened to that podcast, you should. But the TLDR, I think we both liked the original Blade Runner, but we didn't love it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Out of 5 stars, I'm just curious, what would you rate the original Blade Runner?
Let me check my account. I forgot.
Do you have a letterbox?
I do know, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
3.
Oh, nice. Okay. I think I gave it 3.5. I'm a little bit more generous than you. But let's compare that. What did you rate Blade Runner 2049?
4.5.
Wow. Okay, so we're twist up on that one. I also rated it 4.5. All right. Well, that's nice. I don't know if it's a hot take to think that the sequel is better than the original.
I would hope not.
I don't know.
I'd like to see the demographics on that.
The thing with this movie is, I don't know if it's really regarded as a classic now. It absolutely flopped in theaters. And I think Denis Villeneuve has said publicly that he's like, I kind of hate that movie. Or I think he's just associates the poor reception of it with the actual movie. Which I think is a shame because it's really, really, really good. It's maybe one of the best science fiction films, and I don't say that lightly. But I guess just in general, what did you think of the film?
I thought it was fantastic. I think it solved all of the issues I had with the first one.
Yes.
Like every single issue I had with it, which is great.
All right.
One of my initial thoughts was like, how is Cyberpunk not get sued by Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Because it's grabbing a lot of things very hard from this movie.
Yeah, I mean, well, Cyberpunk was in development before this movie came out, but yeah, definitely.
It's a weird coincidence. They line up very closely in certain areas.
Definitely.
But yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I was hooked immediately, which is great. I did not mind the runtime at all. I thought it was actually appropriately paced, and it did not feel like it was long or dragging at all, which is great for a movie that's almost 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Although I guess the last movie I watched was 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
The Brutalist.
Right.
This was a more enjoyable experience. Yeah, no, I loved it. I think Ryan Gosling was fantastic. I think he's a better protagonist than Harrison Ford was.
Well,
yeah, I don't know if that's a hot take or not.
I don't think. I think it would be a bigger hot take if you said you liked Ryan Gosling in general more than Harrison Ford.
Oh no.
But yeah, no, I think Deckard is a way worse character than Kay is.
Yeah,
by
he's
a
very
mile.
one-dimensional compared to
Yes.
Kay.
Yes.
Which is great because a lot of his acting is just sitting in this weird melancholia of dystopian future as this upgraded replicant that is closer to a human. But I enjoyed all the commentary and feelings on the replicants almost being humans, but having this disconnect and longing, which a lot of humans have now in this technological age. So I thought it was a really, really, really cool mirror because the lines between the two were blurred so heavily in this movie that it was really interesting to dig into.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's basically what we were talking about with the first one, where it's is it Lance? It's not Lance Henriksen. Why can't I ever? Rutger Hauer is the main replicant in the original Blade Runner, and I think we both said that he's a way more interesting character.
Oh yeah,
and
saved the movie for me.
Yeah, it's this is the interesting thing is the replicants. Why don't you focus in on that story? And that's what this movie is. And I think that like it's executed absolutely perfectly. I will say the one thing that kind of brings it down, the only thing that doesn't make it 5 stars for me is the like Ana de Armas like relationship stuff
Mhm.
because I feel like I don't know if it was like ripping off her, but it feels very inspired by that, where it's like the dude falls in love with an AI and then like the lines blur.
Mhm.
I think there's even a scene in her where like a prostitute comes in and then like they have sex, but like Scarlett Johansson is like the voice. There's like something weird where it's like there's too many overlaps here where it's like it feels like it's kind of aping off her swag a little bit. Um, but I don't think that it was executed poorly. And I think that Ryan Gosling and Ana de Armas actually have like really good chemistry, um, which I don't know. I think they're both really great in general, but I forgot that aspect of it. I'm like, man, they like, like I don't know, they kind of have like some sparks going off. I like it. Uh,
Yeah, I found that interesting. Like it, it's weird because there's a little bit of a disconnect there where it's like, okay, it's an AI. I'm not gonna like attach to this character at all. But
yeah.
then you get there eventually. But
Hmm.
it's a cool thing where it's like Kay is like this replicant who can't really relate to humans. So like he's not like into human women.
Right.
So like while it might seem really desperate to have an AI girlfriend because that might be the most desperate thing you could ever have in your entire life, like
Right.
it makes sense for him to have it. And
Yeah.
like this man is constantly abused in every other angle of his life except for robot wife that which we kept calling her. We were so
Robot
sad,
wife.
like, no, robot wife died, no.
I know that's so sad. And like, you know, you see that shot of Ryan Gosling and he has like the
Hmm.
bandages and he's looking at like that naked Ana de Armas. And I feel like that shot kind of got incorporated into like the manosphere Joker stuff.
Yeah,
It's
because
like,
I've seen that scene, but I never knew
right.
like what the impact was supposed to be with it.
And I feel like the manosphere stuff like completely twists
Oh, absolutely.
that thing where it's like I feel like when they interpret it, it's like he's like, oh, he's so strong, he doesn't need this super hot whatever Ana de Armas chick that's like naked and he's like completely detached. But it's like, no, he's like traumatized. And
Yeah.
he has and like his girlfriend who just died in front of him is like advertised everywhere.
Yep.
And it's like this dystopian hellscape that like he just wandered into. It's like,
Did they not
Jesus.
pick up that he's really small and that she's gigantic and
Oh
towers
yeah.
over him? Is there any kind of symbolism in there, do you think?
No, probably not.
No.
No, I wouldn't read too much into
Hmm.
it. He's just sick. It's Ryan Gosling. That's the guy from Drive, don't you
I
know?
drive.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of the movie is actually when he's in the car because it reminded me
It's
of
true.
Drive, and Drive is
I
my
know.
favorite film.
Parallels.
Yeah, those are really the only parallels between those two movies, but that's fine. Uh, yeah, I don't know if I joked. I said on the last podcast that I'm a big fan of Dave Bautista. He's just in the
Mhm.
beginning, but
He's really good though.
he's fantastic.
His monologue was amazing.
Yes. I think like I know this is like the coldest take ever, but he's like the best wrestling actor, wrestler turned
Absolutely.
actor.
Yeah.
He picks his scripts really, really well. And then like he's like a genuinely fantastic actor. Everything I've seen him in, even when he's like Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, he knocks that role out of the park.
Hmm.
He can do funny and serious. And like that scene in particular, I wanted to highlight because I think it's maybe one of the best scenes in the movie. But it is very similar to. I'll go classic first. It's very similar to the opening of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where the bad walks into a house and you know that the bad is going to kill the family there, but it's just like he's toying with them and he's like, get me some milk and then I want to see your wife, which was then inspired, or it inspired the opening scene in Inglorious Bastards, which is the best scene in that movie, probably.
Right.
And then I feel like that probably influenced Denis Villeneuve when he made Blade Runner, because it feels like all three of those scenes kind of have the same vibe, but I don't mind because I think all of those are executed great with great actors in all of them. So, uh, yeah, I really loved the opening of this movie. Sets up the entire plot perfectly of the rabbit hole or whatever. But what do you think about baby robots? The
Um,
main drive of the plot.
I thought it was cool. Um, it was, I guess it's a natural progression of what they were trying to do with Blade Runner as a series, like the message of the first movie. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. I did think it was like slightly odd to bring back like both main characters of the last movie. It almost
Yeah.
felt fan servicey in a way,
I would
which I'm
agree.
like, I'm just interested a lot more. So I wasn't too like, they did like a Marvel type reveal on Harrison Ford, which I didn't really like.
Yeah.
He had like this quippy one liner, and I'm like, oh god. I guess that was around this
And,
time.
yeah,
Um,
it would have been like, well, yeah. The Force
yeah,
Awakens either just came out, or I think they were released the same year, 2017.
yeah, it was in the time of Marvel dominance for sure.
Yes.
So it makes sense. But I do think the plot line was very interesting because it does just further get into the distinctions between human and replicant and how the lines are becoming more and more blurred and the constant like the replicants are more human than the human theme that
Hmm.
going on. I do think Jared Leto as a villain actually worked really well. I was
Oh yeah.
scared.
No,
I think
he's
he
good in
fits
this.
the pathetic pseudo intellectual tech billionaire perfectly.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm like this guy is just like Peter Thiel or something like that where he just
Yeah.
wants to like create an army of like sentient beings that he controls.
Hmm.
Um and I think that worked really well for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that I don't like Jared Leto in pretty much everything.
Oh yeah, I do not.
Um, but I do think that he works really well as a villain here. And I think that, they use him sparingly. He isn't like all over.
Yes.
He's
Which
in
is
like
good.
a couple scenes. And he's allowed to kind of be the hammy villain that he is. Um, he doesn't go too over the top with it like he did with like
Mhm.
Joker or something. Um, he's allowed to kind of be more restrained. And I think that like his like gimmick of having all those cameras follow around, that is such a cool
Mhm.
like trait of his where he's like he's because he's blind. He has all these cameras follow him around and that's how he sees. I'm like, that is like legitimately very intimidating and like it like goes to increase his physical size in the frame. I'm like, that's a really cool way to do it without actually making him like a giant, like Ana De Armas or whatever. Yeah, yeah, very nice. There's a lot of birth imagery in this movie. I don't really know if we need to really break that down why that's a thing, but like the first replicant we see, it like gets birthed out of a giant plastic bag,
Mhm.
and then uh, what is it? I think there's like, oh geez, now I can't remember. I wrote a note that was birth imagery, but I should have took note of what was actually there. Maybe it's just the plastic bag thing, but it just like I think like it's interesting that like because Kay says it's like to be born is to have a soul, but the actual replicant birthing progress is actually like or process is actually really similar to like it looks like a birth canal or whatever and they
Mhm.
like flop out. It looks almost like when an animal gives birth and like the baby just like falls out and then just like just limp on the ground for a second.
Yeah.
But then like the actual animal just doesn't really care. That's kind of the vibe I got. That scene is like really, really great, establishing him as like this completely emotionally detached billionaire,
Mhm.
crazy man. Uh, very, very good, very good. Um, but I do want to talk about Harrison Ford because I think he's good in this. I think that this was before a lot of the reboot stuff was happening. So I actually got that wrong. Force Awakens came out in 2015. I think The Last Jedi came out in 2017.
Ah.
So it was like the late 2010s 80s revival boom was like just hitting its stride. But what's weird about those reboots is that a lot of times those legacy characters are treated like absolute shit And it's like, Han Solo, he's back, but he's like a washed up loser that's still doing the thing that he was doing 50 years ago. And he like abandoned his kids and his wife and is just like chilling. It's like, why would you do that? And I feel like they do that with like all of the reboots or like the new Ghostbusters. They're like Harold Ramis was like exile loser nobody, and like he stole all of the stuff from the Ghostbusters and went and became a hermit out in the middle of nowhere. It's like, why is this the trend where it's like we need to treat all of our legacy characters like shit? And this one doesn't really do it. I feel like his like arc or whatever, where we find him in this movie, it actually completely makes sense with like the end of the first one is them going on the run, and he still is on the run. He's a fugitive, but now he's like cold and callous to it. It's this really interesting continuation of his character. I thought that he was way more interesting in this movie as opposed to in the original Blade Runner.
True.
That's just me though.
I like his dog.
He does have a nice dog, and I don't know. I like the quip. I think it's actually like a pretty good summation of the theme of the movie, where like Kay says, "Is that dog real?" And then he says, "I don't know. Ask him." Like, and that's like the whole thing. Is Kay real? I don't know. Ask him. Is Ana De Armas real? Ask her. I'm sure she feels that she's real, and so does Kay. Just because they're synthetic, that's kind of the thing. I don't know. I think it's pretty funny. It's funny and it gets the point across.
It works. I just don't like the Marvel setup of it, but
yeah,
me
when he like
jaded.
when he like walks into the light, I'm like,
yeah.
That I don't even know if it feels more like modern Star Wars when it's like the legacy characters hiding and then they come out of the shadows and it's like, that's Boba Fett. Or I think that's like, it's pretty G-dang similar to his introduction in The Force Awakens, where it's like he gets onto the Millennium Falcon and then he like comes out around the corner and he's like, Chewie, we're home. And I'm like, oh, nice. I think it's more of a Star Wars thing, but Marvel does it too. They're all the same, if you ask me.
It's literally the same company.
It's the same company. Although one is done way worse than the other. And I'll let you decide.
I won't say which one.
I won't say. It's Star Wars. Star Wars is infinitely worse than Marvel. Even though Marvel is not very good right now either. But I don't know. You win some, you lose some, I guess.
I suppose.
Were you shocked by the twist of the film?
I mean, it actually like caught me off guard a little bit, which is good.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I'm like, okay, this seems pretty obvious. I hope there's like a twist, and there was. But like, I kind of forgot about it by the time it got there, and I'm like, oh, this is nice. I'm glad I kind of got fooled a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I think just puts you in the POV of Kay even more, which is great.
Right.
You connect with the character a lot more. I think that's great with that kind of protagonist too, because like he's not doing a lot of talking. You're kind of just observing the world through his eyes, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Because you're both kind of like discovering a lot of this together, which is always a nice trope that I enjoy.
Yes.
Because like with the original Blade Runner, I was not really connected to Harrison Ford's character that much.
No.
I was like glued to the screen with this one though. So I think it was a nice twist. And I think
so.
That setting up the ending was like really fantastic.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. And I feel like it's one of those where it's like it kind of makes you view the movie differently, which like a great twist should. Where it's like in that scene where he talks to her about the memory, like she starts crying. And like when you watch that the first time, you're like, oh, she knows something. Like she implanted that memory or whatever. And so then he like starts freaking out. And I'm like, oh, so then like you're like, oh, okay, because not Harrison Ford, because Kay is the baby. But then it's like once it's revealed that it's her, it makes sense that she's crying because she's reliving her own memory. I'm like, oh shit, that's awesome. I love stuff like that. The Sixth Sense iness. I like that. But for some reason, like, because that was like basically the only thing I remember. Or like when I remembered it, I'm like, I thought that like there was a baby, but Kay wasn't. And so like when they were like, K is. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, is he? Am I misremembering that? Is he the baby? But then it turns out he's not the baby, and I was right.
You got the twist again.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Harrison Ford almost dying in the car? I think he
Yeah, that was
I
interesting.
think he actually like came close. Because
Yeah,
it was like on the set of Force Awakens, he broke his leg in an automatic door, and then he almost drowned on the set of this one. If I'm
that's crazy.
remembering the story right, it's like in the span of 2 years, it was like two major onset accidents with Harrison Ford. Um,
You are not Mission Impossible.
no,
You are
no.
not Tom Cruise.
I honestly, I think this whenever there's scenes like that in movies where like characters are drowning, and I'm like, how do you even do stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm like, I would hate that.
Yeah, because like he's
I guess it's
tied
part of the job,
down.
but like, yeah.
How do you? I don't know. There has to be like some sort of precautions. And I mean, he didn't drown
They have to,
actually.
yeah.
Well, he almost drowned actually, but he didn't. So I don't know. Maybe it wasn't as safe as I thought, but I don't know. Um,
I mean, Alec Baldwin shot a guy,
that's
so
true.
you never
That's
know.
true. That was a big accident.
That was a big accident, but
On the
yeah,
record.
like I'm saying,
Yeah, that's true.
it's
Movie
safe
sets
to
are
avoid.
dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You should
Most
watch the
dangerous
movie
job
The
in the world.
Fall Guy. That
Fall Guy.
movie's all no the Fall Guy with Ryan
Oh
Gosling.
yeah.
That's all about dangerous movie sets are. Not a very good movie, but it's okay. What else is there to say? Oh, it's probably it's very visually striking.
It
It,
really is.
it might be Villeneuve's prettiest movie. I'll say that there's some shots in Dune that are nice, but there's not that much variation in that. It's just all desert. But here you got like a nice mix where it's like when you're in the the town. Well, I don't even know what it is. The city I think it's
City,
L.A., isn't it?
the greater LA area.
Yeah. I remember it was weird because like when the prostitutes are like around K, some cops walk by and it just says
Hmm.
LAPD, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's so weird.
like, oh. So they're still called that, but I guess that makes sense. But yeah, when you're in LA, you got like those bright neons, you got all the billboards. Not that many Coke billboards. I actually didn't catch any Coke
No,
billboards.
there was an Atari one though, which I thought was really funny.
there was there was an Atari and there was a Pan Am. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
nice. I'm glad that they kept the product placement for companies that don't
Hmm.
exist anymore. It would have been weird if there was like a bunch of Coke ads. It's like, oh, that would have felt
Yeah,
skeezy.
too real.
Yeah, too real. Which I mean, I guess that's probably the point.
I mean, the movie's already too real, if we're being honest. Like,
Oh yeah.
I think the world building of this one is so much better. One, because it was
Yes.
made in modern day, and the '80s were so far off in what they thought would happen in 30 years, which
Yeah.
is crazy to me. But this one felt a lot more accurate to the point where it's almost depressing watching these these like scenes and like how people are using technology and like
Yeah.
exploitation and stuff. Because I'm like, this is getting pretty close to what it will probably happen in 10, 20 years.
Right.
Um, if today, the current day, the way things are headed is any trajectory, it seems lifeless and
Hmm.
miserable. Um, I did enjoy that they kind of toned down the weird Asian
Yes.
exploitation
Yeah.
stuff. That was strange. It did kind of have the cyberpunk like over exploitation of women, but at the same time, it makes sense as
Uh,
a metaphor of like constant need for like stimulation and dopamine to like distract you from this horrible place you're
right.
around. Um, so it makes sense given like what the economic and everything of this world is. I
Hmm.
also really it was striking watching like him literally going first of all greater LA sucking up San Diego and turning it into a dump is hilarious. I don't know if someone had like a hatred for San Diego on the writing team and they're like,
I
dude, I'm gonna do the funniest thing ever.
I don't know, but I love
But
that too.
I really liked that. Um, but the part that like this cop is going to Trash Island to try to find something out, and like the poor trash people are like onto him,
Yeah.
and then the billionaire's assistant, with the flick of her wrist while getting a manicure, just bombs the poor people in garbage land
Right.
for no reason. That I
Ah,
thought was like incredibly striking, and I'm like,
yes.
wow.
Yes. That was really, really good. I
And
forgot
then
about that.
the child, factory or, like, the
Yeah,
the circuit board factory.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of, like
it's good.
that's the good type of, like, exploitation on screen, though, where
Mhm.
it's like, with the Asian stuff, I feel like that's, like, perpetuating, like, not even, like, negative stereotypes, but just stereotypes in general,
Yeah,
where it's
exactly.
like and I think this maybe is a criticism of cyberpunk in general, where it's like cyberpunk, it's technology meets Asian mysticism. I'm like,
Yep.
no, we don't need to do that. Just have it be like regular technology. And I feel like this movie does that pretty well.
Mhm.
And the actual like stuff it's saying. That scene with the bombs is absolutely fantastic. I I don't know how I forgot about that. I didn't. How did I not write that in my notes? That's a bad call on my end. Um, but yeah, I absolutely love. I thought that like the child factory part was like I don't know. I was like absolutely riveted. Where it's like
Mhm.
I guess it like makes sense. Like this is kind of like futuristic. It's almost post apocalyptic. When we get to that part, it feels
Yeah.
like Mad Max. Where it's like they're using children as like forced labor to get nickel or something. Like it was like scrap
Yeah.
metal.
Just, like, literally a direct comparison to, like, Congo, like,
Right.
mining, like, lithium for EVs. Like, it's
Yeah,
one to one,
that's a
which is
good
crazy.
point. Yeah. Yeah, wow. And see you're more about like the you can really you're good at like extrapolating stuff like that. Where I'm
What I
like
do.
I like the filmmaking stuff. The
Yeah, I
writing part of it.
appreciate both, but, like, those things, like, really just, like if you can express that in such a simple visual form, it's,
Yeah.
like, very striking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I feel like that's what Villeneuve does best. Like, I know I've said this before, but like, dialogue is not his strong suit. I don't
Mhm.
think he wrote this movie. I think he just
No, I don't think
directed it,
so.
which makes sense because it doesn't really feel like his writing style, which is like people barely talking and let the visuals do the work. I still think that the visuals do a lot of the heavy lifting here,
Mhm.
but I actually think that the dialogue is pretty well written. Like like Dave Bautista's monologue, or I really like the like confrontation between the police chief and the evil cyborg lady.
Mhm.
I'm like that felt like a really nice moment where like we were kind of like, I don't know how to feel about the police chief lady. It's obvious that they have like some sort of relationship with Kay, but I don't really know how far it goes. And so I was glad when she like stuck up for him, and I felt like that conversation had a lot of weight to it. I liked it a lot.
Me
Um,
too. I think it's rare getting a sci-fi with this good of dialogue, actually. I feel like, sometimes
yes,
they can get wrapped up in, technical speak where you're like, "What is happening?"
that's a good
But
point. Yeah,
it stayed very human throughout all of it, which is good. Which it's a perfect
yeah.
balance between human and technology, which just, like you're hitting it on the micro and macro level throughout this movie, which is just really
Mm.
great. I also love the flashbacks of, like, they're, like, enhancing the bones or whatever, and, like, I'm
Oh
like, "That's like
yeah.
the TV scene in the first one where he's like, 'Enhance.'"
But that almost like it makes more sense than this
It
one,
makes so much more
where they're like
sense.
looking at a microscope, so it makes sense that
Yeah.
you'd be able to zoom in more.
Mhm.
I don't know. I still love the enhanced scene in the original
I do
Blade
too. I was just
Runner.
like, I'm glad there was, like, a subtle nod to it, but it's,
Yeah,
like, also works better in this movie.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that too. Where it's like I feel like the technology in this movie is like really well done, and that it feels
Mhm.
like it's just an extension of what we have now. Where it's
Yep.
like we have X-ray machines, but it makes sense that like in 30 years, there's probably going to be X-ray machines that can zoom down into like the molecular
Right.
level, and that's just going to be readily available.
Mhm.
And like I feel like the way that like computers work feels real, but this is something I was thinking about in 20 years, is this going to feel like how Blade Runner feels now? Where
Um,
it's like, I don't know, because like the original Blade Runner, like everyone has like CRT TVs, and it feels like
yeah.
it's still more advanced than it was in the 80s, but it doesn't feel that much more advanced, really. They just have flying cars. But here,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't
Like,
know.
will this age poorly? Is
I
what I'm
think it'll
thinking.
age well. I think because like it does set itself in an alternate universe. Because I do like how this movie extends the technology from the first movie. So it's
Yeah.
not like introducing smartphones and stuff
Well,
like you
yeah.
would see today. It's like we're taking these like the moving photographs, like we're updating it to
Mm,
like what it would look like if you printed it from a DSLR camera instead of a film
right.
camera, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I think it depends on like because the way the world's going right now, it might get kind of similar, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be dopamine machines. Honestly, this movie probably has more useful technology than what we'll probably get. We've
That's
reached a
true.
technology slump where a lot of it just like stopped being exciting and new. The revolution towards it kind of stopped, and now we're like
Yeah.
going towards this weird AI thing, which is becoming kind of this like pseudo religious thing for a lot of these freaks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting. I think it works well in that universe, and it could be something
Mm,
that happens, now. I don't think flying
yeah.
cars will ever be a thing. I don't
No,
see the usage
it
of
doesn't
that.
really
I
seem
don't know why
feasible.
that was such an obsession.
I don't know. They look sick as hell in this
They
movie.
do. They look really good.
Kay's car is awesome.
Hmm.
I think I need to rescind my statement that I said in the original Blade Runner, where Deckard might be the coolest that anybody has looked on screen, because I looked up if you could get Kay's jacket online. I'm
Oh,
like,
it's
It
such a
looks
good
so
jacket.
sick."
It's such a good jacket.
The trench coat that like the collar flips up to like
Uh-huh.
cover the bottom half of your face. I'm like, that's so sick.
Everybody wore a cool jacket in the first one, but
That's
I'm glad
true.
they gave Kay a just as cool jacket in this one.
Yeah, I appreciate that. They're like, we need to somehow one up how cool
Mhm.
Harrison Ford looks. And I think they do. His car, I mean, I'm a sucker for how guns look in
Oh
this
yeah.
franchise, where they still kind of look like magnums,
Hmm.
but I actually don't know what separates them from magnums because they're still firing like physical rounds. It isn't like lasers. So
Yeah, it's interesting.
I guess they're just super guns. They have
I don't
a
know.
really great sound design too. They're really like low and punchy.
Yeah, it felt tactile. I'm like, I can imagine
Yeah,
myself like loading up Halo or something and having that kind
yeah.
of thing.
It's really interesting. I would really like. I mean, I don't know if I would really like, but I think it would be cool to get some sort of video game set in this universe, a
Give
cyberpunk
me LA
esque.
Noir, but in Blade
Yeah,
Runner.
yeah, yeah. Because that's
Give
like
me
the
a
best
cyberpunk.
stuff.
I want an actual like noir game.
That's a great point. There needs to be more. I don't understand why there aren't more detective games
Hmm.
because those shit slaps.
That's why Disco Elysium's the best game ever made.
Exactly. I love being a detective.
A drunk detective.
And that's the best stuff. Like, I don't know. I know that the original is technically a neo noir, but this feels
Hmm.
more like a noir than Blade Runner ever did.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Just the pacing and the way everything is kind of strewn out. Like everything
yeah,
feels like you are literally in the middle of like a rabbit hole, like you said earlier.
yeah. Ah, I don't know. This is a special movie. And I think more people need to watch it. I know like people have come around to it now,
Hmm.
but like, come on. This is I don't know. This is better than the original. I'll say it.
Absolutely.
I'll say
Leaps
it.
and bounds, I'll say.
Yeah. The one thing that well, the romance thing kind of took me out, but also having the deep fake Rachel, yeah, that feels
Hmm.
weird. It doesn't
Yeah.
and it even though it's only well, I guess it's 8 years old now, it's still it aged pretty bad. Like, oh, that
Yeah.
doesn't look good.
There's definitely a lot of parts of this movie that kind of did, but it didn't take me out too much.
I don't know. I think everything else kind of worked. Like, I was paying attention to that where I'm like, are the
Hmm.
cameras like the floating cameras like is that gonna look good or as good as it did back then? I still think they hold up. Like, I don't think it
Yeah.
looks as good as Dune,
No.
but like I
I
don't
think the
know.
only one was like when like the car scenes when he's just kind of like flying to different locations. I think some of the
Oh,
background was like a little bit like less detailed than you'd expect nowadays. But I'm
yeah.
also watching on a horrible TV, so I can't really like I need
Oh,
to watch it
sure.
on a good TV.
I was watching it on a good TV. I didn't notice like the background stuff. I guess there was some like lighting with like the reflections
Maybe
off of the
that's what it
car.
was. Yeah, there's something a little bit like
Yeah.
placed. Like it feels like it is placed in a scene.
Yeah. But that was like the only thing really.
Yeah, and it didn't really take me out. It's like, oh, it's
No.
2017. Like,
Yeah. It is kind of crazy. Like, and this was something that I wanted to compare to. I wanted to see what the budget of this movie was
mhm.
and then compare that to like Captain America Brave New World, the newest Marvel movie. Okay, so the budget of Blade Runner 2049 is floating somewhere between $165 million. Let's see how much the Brave New World budget is. Because I don't know if you've seen any stills from that movie.
I've seen the trailer and it looked abysmal.
Yes. I don't think it's quite as bad as the Ant-Man Quantumania, but it's not much better. The budget for Captain America Brave New World is 180 million. So 20 million extra, and it still looks worse than a movie that came out 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what that says. It
I
says
think everything
something.
right now is in a regression state, which
Yeah.
is natural right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's not, it's no coincidence that a lot of stuff that you experience and buy and everything is like getting worse. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. There's still good stuff being made. I don't want to
Absolutely.
like,
It's not everything, but
no,
you will see a noticeable difference in a lot of the things.
yeah, yeah, especially stuff over at the House of Mouse. They seem to be floundering right now, and pun not intended, because of the Little Mermaid.
Yeah. Little Mermaid.
Yeah. Uh, I feel like we talk about Disney a lot and how
We
much
do.
they suck. Uh, Disney catches a lot of strays on this show, which is fine, I think.
They're a punching bag, but they deserve it.
Do we want to? Can we talk about David Dastmalchian and how he was like, he's in like some of the best movies of all time, but wasn't like mainstream until the Suicide Squad, and he was Polka Dot Man. Like I was like, oh, he's in this movie too, because he's in The
Mhm.
Dark Knight, and I always forget that he's in that. And then like he's also in Blade Runner 2049.
I
And
feel
I'll,
like every scene in this movie for the first 45 minutes was like, oh, they're in this too?
yeah, that's
Every
true.
single person they showed on screen, I'm like, oh, I know that person.
That's true. It's a really good cast. And I love
Hmm.
that they got old Frankie Blue Eyes to be in the movie
Real.
too. You can't have a neo-noir thriller without Frankie Sinatra. And I love that too. That action scene between Deckard and Kay in
Hmm.
the club with the hollow Elvis.
That was really cool.
Like that's so sick. The Tupac hologram being the backdrop in an action scene.
Hmm.
They should do that in the new John Wick film.
It did feel like a John Wick scene almost.
Well, not nearly as good choreography, but
No,
uh,
but it fit the weird, dreary. I don't know. The lighting in this movie is phenomenal. I was just like, oh my
yes,
God.
yes, the man, the all the rust stuff, that like orange haze
Yeah.
over that part of the
I
movie.
I do a lot of color work in my real job, and I like am just blown away by this movie. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I don't understand why. Well, I do kind of understand why this wasn't a success when it came out. Because
Yeah, it did not feel very 2017 at all.
no,
Like the zeitgeist was not about very slow, drawn out sci-fi
no.
noirs at the time. It was very flashy at the time.
Yes, it was like big blockbusters.
Yeah.
Like I think that was the same year that like Infinity War came out.
Oh yeah. I think it was full 80s revival, gigantic blockbuster time.
Yeah. And so like people were not really fucking with this, which
Hmm.
is a shame.
If this came out nowadays, I think it would be like the biggest thing ever.
Oh, probably. Yeah, if it came out now and was like released by A24, then
Hmm.
like all of the pretentious weirdos would like it.
Hmm.
and it would be like the next. What even is? Has there been a big sci-fi movie that came out recently?
I don't know.
I don't. I don't know. I feel like sci-fi
Mickey
is
17. That's not out.
well soon. I am excited for that though.
It does look good.
Yeah, I like Bong Joon-ho. I guess I'm looking at stuff I've seen, and the closest thing that I can see that maybe is Godzilla minus one. It's kind of sci-fi, not really. That's the closest thing I think,
Hmm.
which is a shame because well, I guess actually the most recent big sci-fi thing that was a big slow burn was Dune 2.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, so I
So
guess it's just
not
one
much has
guy.
changed, I suppose. Yeah.
But Dune 2 was like that was a big thing.
It was, yeah.
It got a lot of cash. I don't know. I think we need to bring it back. Denis, this is my personal plea. I think he said that
Okay.
Dune 3 is going to be the last Dune movie he makes. Please come back to making not that Blade Runner 2049 is an original sci-fi movie, but you know, make another Arrival and I will love you until the day I die. Speaking of, that might be a good one to do next on features. If you liked
Be down.
this, I think you would like
Hmm.
Arrival.
I'm sure I would.
It's slow and sci-fi stuff about the human condition, whatever.
You love the human condition.
Plus, China's the bad guy, and I know you hate China.
Oh, dang it.
Well, I don't know. They're not the bad guy. It's I don't know.
From a certain perspective.
I don't think they're necessarily the bad guy, but it's just like whatever. When we do that, we'll talk about it. Because I don't think it's like it's not that black and white that China is just the
No,
bad
yeah.
guy. It's just like
It's not Top Gun.
no. Well, Top Gun, like that Maverick was like too scared to even like
Yeah,
say
it's like, oh, this could
anything.
be North Korea or Russia or some other
Like
weird Eastern
just
state we don't like, but I don't know.
like yeah, all of the bad guys were wearing like full head to toe armor and helmets, so like you can't even tell like nationality or anything, and then like no flags. It's like
That's where like Call of Duty's going. Like, we're gonna make a fake state because we don't feel comfortable doing any of this.
I actually am fine with that. If
I
it's
I
like
am too if you're gonna go off in your weirdo
yeah.
blockbuster shooters, yeah.
Yeah, I would
But
much
they put so
rather
many tropes into it, you could basically tell what country
well,
they're talking about.
yeah, that's true. If it's like we are here in Vostrovia, it's like okay,
Yeah.
got it. But like I don't know, do something like that, but not that overt.
Hmm.
Because I don't want to think about geopolitical stuff in a big blockbuster,
And I
you
do,
know.
but it'll ruin it for me because I'll get mad at it.
Yeah, I just don't want to even just don't try. I
Yeah.
don't because you know in Hollywood they're not gonna do anything nuanced with it. So I'm
No,
like,
and if you use US military equipment, you have to get the sign off
yes,
from the military, so
yeah,
you
you
can't
do.
do anything too crazy.
Yes, that's true.
You can be critical, but there's certain lines drawn
Well,
to it. So,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the rules are with that.
hmm,
I know.
usually it's like there's a bad actor in our ranks
Oh,
because
that's
you
right.
can't call the entire organization like
Right.
corrupt. There's like a bad sector or a bad like little group in here.
Yeah, yeah. I know you haven't seen Doctor Strangelove, but that's the thing in Doctor Strangelove is that there's a
Mhm.
rogue general that went crazy and launched nukes. But that wouldn't happen if that guy wasn't
Agent
crazy.
Arthur.
Uh, actually, what is his name? I think his name is Jack T. Ripper in that
Oh yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Because all
I feel
the
like I've like seen that movie by proxy just because it's like
probably
it's so potent.
it's a great one. Maybe I was gonna say maybe
We'll
we
get
should do
there.
a feature
Yeah,
on
we'll
that.
get there.
I did that
You
on
just did
my
one.
podcast.
It's on my list though, so
Okay.
I'll get
We'll talk about it on the main
there. Mhm.
podcast when you watch it, because I'd be down to talk about it. So
I'd probably have a lot to say. I tend to have
probably
opinions about things.
it's a great movie. I'm
Oh yeah, I've heard.
it's not I don't know if it's like the political satire. Well, I mean there is political satire, but it's goofy. It's
From what I've
funny.
heard, it's like very well done though. So
Yeah, well, not to go too off topic, but Kubrick was like super depressed because he was like, it was like late 60s, like right after the Cuban Missile Crisis. He thought
hmm
the world was going to end. And he was like, I don't know how else to deal with this than to make a funny comedy. And so that's what he did. But it is loaded with stuff. A movie's going to be good when like there's a title that like starts the movie and it says there are practices and policies in place that will stop the events from this movie from happening in the actual US Army. Don't get scared. Like, oh geez. So they
That's
really
good.
poke fun at the army. They had to give a disclaimer. So maybe someday, but I think that's pretty much it for Blade Runner, unless you have something else you wanted to say.
No, I think it was fantastic. I think the ending was gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. The equally like stunning to look at and like intriguing story wise, which is
Yeah.
obviously what you're looking for. Everything just felt so balanced and right. I was never out of it for like a minute, and I was always just like glued to whatever was going on, which is
Yeah.
phenomenal for a movie that's almost 3 hours long. So,
That is
but
crazy. I
yeah,
think
that was fantastic.
very, very good. If you have not seen it, first of all, why did you watch this
I
or
should
listen
watch
to
this
it?
first.
Because we just spoiled it. I think, well, yeah, we did talk about like pretty much everything,
We did, yeah.
but
Still
still
watch it
watch
though,
it.
even if you spoiled it, because there's a lot we didn't. There's a lot of nuance and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And it's just a great tale.
It really is.
Yeah, won't be missing out. But I think that'll do it for this feature. Bye! Why do I always alternate between features and presents? And I don't, what do we call these?
Are they features? I feel like they're
They're
features.
features?
I think so.
Okay. I think that's right.
Yeah, features.
Okay. Features it is. Okay. Okay, so I said it right. All right. I don't have much to talk about with the main podcast, so
Okay.
do you?
Um, a little bit, but not like a whole lot.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
We'll ramble at the end for 25 minutes and we'll fill out the episode.
That's fine with me.